Well,
I don't know.
thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for being on here.
absolutely, man.
So what this is all about is talking to people, having a conversation, people that are trying to make a difference, that are trying to help better people. And once I saw what you were doing, it was like an instant thought that I wanted to do this. So
Yeah.
um, could you just kind of give me your name and a little background of kind of what you're doing?
Yeah. So my name is Michael Beseris. What I'm trying to do is just help educate people when it comes to health and fitness. In like the fitness industry, there's kind of like a just this. There's really bad information more than there's good information, and just regular people get hurt because of it. And there's not a lot of people out there who I think are entering the field because they're actually trying to help people. And so I'm just trying to like bridge that gap, coming from like a little more educated background, but then actually being able to take that complex information and communicate it to Mrs. Johnson across the street. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. What's the biggest misconception that you see in the health industry?
It's just that, well, man, there's a lot. There's like this notion that the way you look means that you know the most, or um, there's all sorts of things like that, like that you're the smartest person, that means you're the best person to take advice from, like a doctor or something like that. Like, can you communicate the information, like I said, to actually help someone who doesn't really care about the complex scientific process behind whatever this is? Can you explain it in a way that like helps me, and I can go apply in real life?
And what's the most important thing about fitness is some people think, oh, if I go work out for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, I can go home and eat a pizza because I just worked out. What is the most important aspect of health?
um, all of it. And when you talk about health, you have to like really define like what you're talking about, because there's so many different aspects of health. There's physical health, there's mental health, there's emotional health, there's social health, there's the way you look, the way you feel about yourself, the way that you like your relationships with other people, your relationship with like food and exercise, and all of those things are different, and they like, I don't know, they just like involve a lot of different ways of thinking. And it's not just like, oh, I look really good, so I'm fit and I can teach you how to be fit. It's like all of those things kind of encompass one kind of like a thing that you should be trying to achieve when it comes to when you say health. Like it's all of those things, not just one of
Could you give me a list of things that if I'm trying to improve my overall health, my psychological
them.
health, my physical health, what are some good, three or four go-tos that are easy for someone to start off with? What should I do?
You should exercise, and that looks different for everybody. You should prioritize eating nutritious foods. You should develop like meaningful relationships, and then you should like prioritize kind of the basic things like sleep and kind of those things I talked about, like relationships are important. They're overlooked. Like relationships with other people, like I said, relationships with like your food, your exercise, all of those things. But yeah, just like those basic things that people tend to overlook to try and get like a body type.
And that's kind of what people have fallen into because you see it on Instagram, you see it all over the
Yeah,
magazines of chiseled perfect bodies, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the mind is healthy. And when, it's kind of difficult when you see that to try to achieve it, and if you can't achieve that perfection, then you don't want to do it anymore. That's not a
exactly.
sustainable lifestyle.
And it's an unrealistic expectation. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of those people that you see on the magazines or see on Instagram, like they're not real life. Um, they actually have really bad relationships with food and exercise. They fall into like a restrict binge cycle when it comes to food. They exercise 3 to 4 times a week. They're extremely unhappy in their relationships because their entire life revolves around, I have to look this certain way to be on the cover of this magazine or to post this picture. And like I said, it's not like real life. Like for me and you to achieve that, it's just not going to happen. And that's what I think is missed on a lot of people, is they think that that is what health and fitness is, and it's everything that's like totally wrong with the industry.
What are some things we can do to improve our relationship with food? because America is probably the most infamous country in the whole world with
Yeah.
having a not the greatest relationship with food.
Yeah. It's just understanding that food has different values and different properties, right? It's not just calories and energy, right? Like when I ask you, tell me what you think of when I say popcorn.
Think of a good snack, movies.
Movies. That's
Yeah,
what I was going for. Most people think of the movies or, a date night or whatever it
right,
is.
right.
That's a value of that food. And there's different values of foods that go, like I said, far beyond calories. There's cultural, there's, relationships, there's other things that like these foods have properties of, and recognizing all of those and then kind of like seeing, okay, how does this help me in this instance? Is my goal to lose body fat? Then maybe I shouldn't eat the movie theater popcorn. But is my goal to go and enjoy that movie with my wife? And then, yeah, I'm going to enjoy the popcorn because that's the value I'm expecting out of it at that moment in time. But yeah, it's just kind of like recognizing that it's not just calories and macros. It's food has these different values, and we need to like be aware of those.
And that's one thing that kind of growing up, I had the notion that eating is simple. And, you pop something in the microwave or you go to McDonald's and you eat and then you don't think about it anymore. When you actually start to look into it, you have to cook, you have to pick the correct food, you have to know all the information about the food. It can be a bit overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips on your average man trying to jump into the world of food and it's so overwhelming? What can you do about that?
Yeah, well, I think that's a very common problem that people have. Like when they're younger, like we're super active. We're playing. Like I grew up riding my bike all the time. I grew up playing sports. Like you don't really have to think about it because you're burning through all of these calories. Then you can pretty much eat whatever you want, and plus your parents are feeding you fruits, vegetables, proteins, things that are like inherently better for you than the McDonald's or whatever the case may be. When it comes to like understanding those sorts of things, I think that, like I was talking about at the beginning, like we we just lack that fundamental understanding of kind of those basic nutrition and macronutrient like things that are important to know. And a lot of the times, like I don't know if it's the education that, like I said, there's some people who maybe they're not explaining it right or in a way that we can understand and then go apply. And that's kind of what I was talking about. So when we take health class and when we take like these nutrition classes, like they're teaching us like the Krebs cycle or anaerobic glycolysis, and like to you that probably doesn't mean anything, and you don't really need to know that. You want to know like, why should I eat carbs, how much should I eat, and where do I start, and that sort of thing. And so I mean, that's where I tried to bridge that gap. I made that macro guide. I don't know if you're going to jump your question. You're probably going to ask me about
Yeah,
that.
totally. Let's get into that right now. Yeah,
So,
tell me about that.
I mean, like I said, there's just like a fundamental lack of. So basically, what I have is a guide that kind of explains what I was just talking about, because I kept having the same conversation with my clients over and over again when they came to me, and they didn't even know what a macronutrient was. And that's like fundamental. You learn that in like high school health, or you should learn that in high school health. So like, why do you not know that kind of thing? And to me, it wasn't just like one person coming to me or just like a couple, because if that's the case, then okay, maybe it's not that deep of an issue. But when it's like everybody and they have no idea what you're talking about, you're like, okay, where can I send them to give them this basic information in a way that's like easy to understand, and then, like I said, go apply. And there was like nothing, because like, I mean, personally for me, like that would have been like easy. Like it would have helped my clients drive better results, and they would have thanked me for it later because I helped them. But there was just like nothing to send them to. So I basically made a webinar course where I tried to teach it to 17-year-old me who didn't really know anything about nutrition, macronutrients, stuff like that, what they are, why they're important to understand at like a fundamental basis, and where to start and how to go apply that.
Could you give me the definition of a macronutrient?
Macronutrients are four. How do I want to say this? Because I want to make it simple for people. They are the four energy. Food is broken down into energy.
Mm.
Our body uses that energy. Okay. So there are four different types of energy that our body uses. So those are the macronutrients. They're basically just energy, fats, carbs, protein, and alcohol is technically one, but you don't even need to explain that to people because it's just not that important unless you're drinking all the time, which
Right.
is a different discussion.
And so I actually have a question for you about alcohol. How does alcohol impact your physical fitness?
Um, it depends. In moderation, like realistically, it's probably okay. It's probably not gonna like make you feel the best. It's I'm sure if you've ever woken up after a night of drinking, you know that you probably don't want to go do some exercise or something like that. So, like I said, you have to recognize the properties of alcohol as well. So, is it a night out with your friends and you're looking for that for the value? Then alcohol is going to support your social relationships and your social health. Um, if you have a football game the next day and you're hungover, you're probably not going to perform the best, and you need to recognize that. In moderation, generally fine. If you're drinking all the time, probably speaks to, like I said, a different problem and something that I'm like not qualified to help you with.
And that kind of goes with anything. If you overdo anything,
Yeah,
if you eat 50 bananas in a day, that's not good for you. Even though bananas could maybe give you some
are
benefits.
inherently
Right,
good.
right.
Yeah.
So I actually have some screenshots of some of your tweets,
Okay.
and I just wanted to look over
Hopefully
them.
not the ones from college.
So you say the worst part about fat loss, if you do it right, it's going to take a lot longer than you want it to. The best part, if you do it right, you only have to do it once because you built the behaviors and habits to maintain it forever. The faster you rush, the faster you regain.
Yeah.
Could you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah. So I think you know, kind of going back to my mission of just kind of trying to like be the person who helps people, like the majority of people. I think we live in a society where people like want it right now, and that's a lot of different reasons. And I think social media, society, those sorts of things like play a big part in like we expect this instant gratification. Fat loss is not like that. Muscle gain is not like that. Like fitness and health is not like that. It's something that it should be something that is part of your life forever. And if you're so focused on I need to lose X amount of weight in this short amount of time, you're never gonna. You might do it initially, but because you didn't build those behaviors, because you didn't build those habits, it's not going to be something that you can do forever. And that's a bigger problem because you could very easily run 10 miles every day and probably see significant physical results, but are you going to be able to do that forever? Probably not.
So sustainability is a big thing for you.
Sustainability
Is
is
everything.
key. Yeah. Like why are you trying to do something if you're not going to try to do it forever? And I'm not saying you have to live in the gym 7 days a week, but should you be exercising in some form a lot more than you probably are? Yeah, I think that I'm comfortable saying that. Like, I think obviously resistance training is the best thing, but if you're someone who enjoys distance running or mountain biking or whatever the case may be, like that's awesome. You're doing stuff. It should be something that you can do forever, right? If your motivation for mountain biking is because you want to lose weight, um, you might mountain bike for a little bit, but once you lose that weight, you're probably not going to keep mountain biking. And then because you didn't keep doing what you were doing, it's almost inevitable that you're going to regain that. So you didn't build the behaviors, the habits. It's not sustainable, and it's something that ultimately is going to hurt you in the long run.
And so a lot of integration needs to happen where you are integrating things into your life slowly so you can sustain them for a long time. If you wake up and say, I'm going to go mountain bike for 5 miles, I'm going to run for 10 miles, and then I'm going to go lift for 2 hours, you'll overwhelm yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, it's a process. Like I said, like it's going to take a lot longer than you want it to, and that starts with one or two things at a time. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I'm going to start resistance training, and I'm going to learn how to do the squat, deadlift, bench press, and I'm going to start doing those things 2 times a week. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that you're like, yeah, I'm going to you take someone who's never worked out before, you're not going to say, hey, you need to work out 7 days a week. You're going to say, you should come work out 1 day a week and learn the fundamentals. And then once you see the benefits of 1 time a week, then maybe you can add that second
Right.
day and kind of reverse engineering it in a way that, like I said, is going to be sustainable for you in 5 years, not just right now.
And when you're integrating, you have to build a relationship and a connection with food and exercise and everything. So that's, I mean, what you're doing is really amazing, because this is a huge struggle in America, is people dealing with this.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I don't think that there's a lot of people within the fitness industry who are really trying to talk to the majority of people and trying to teach these things. You've got let's call them the exercise bros on one end, who are trying to fight over something that, really doesn't even matter. They're trying to explain something in a way that is a little bit too oversimplified. And then you've got the academics on the other side, who are trying to explain to the other 5% of people that, like I said, they know way more and they know all these complex pathways. And then you've got 90% of people in the middle who are like, what the hell do I do? You know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to, they can fight over those people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk to the 90% of people who have no idea where to start, what to do, and those sorts of things, the
Absolutely.
struggles.
People tend to gravitate more towards the CrossFit circuit boot camp training because they feel it more than regular strength training. Just because you feel things more doesn't necessarily make them better for fat loss or muscle gain. Faster, sweatier, sore is not better. Better is better.
So let's talk about kind of what our motivation is for why we're doing what we're doing. Are those things inherently bad? No. Is, being sweaty after a workout bad? No. Is being sore after a workout inherently bad? No, not necessarily. But is that your reason for working out? Because if it is, then you're not building those processes and habits and relationships with exercise that you need to be in order to do it for the rest of your life. Because there's going to be a point where your body adapts to something like a boot camp or a CrossFit, where in 45 minutes you're just doing circuits for that 45 minutes. You know what I'm saying? You can only do so much and you can only go so fast. Versus like traditional strength training, you can manipulate that in so many different ways. You can change the rep scheme, you can change the intensity, you can change the tempo at which you lift, and those sorts of things. Like intensity is something that you can manipulate within that a little bit better than those other methodologies. And so that's why I kind of think that it's like people gravitate towards that more, is because, again, they feel it more.
Right.
But what are you, what is that doing for you?
Mm-hmm.
Is it making you sweatier?
Right. And is that the goal?
Yeah. If that's the goal, if you just want to go get sweaty, then do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Go get sweaty. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep,
if you want to not be able to breathe after a workout, then go do that. It's probably not the smartest thing you should be doing. But yeah, people think that, oh, I was so sore, that means that it was the best thing for me, and oftentimes that's not the case. Because again, it kind of just misses those big picture things, like the habits, the behaviors, the relationships, why you're doing what you're doing, and those sorts of things.
I know a lot of people that get their water from juice that they drink, high sugar juice, soda. Another relationship that is lacking in America is our relationship with water. You don't see a lot of people keeping necessarily enough water in their body all the time. How important is water, and how much should we drink a day?
Okay, yeah. So that's a good question, and this is something I get a lot from people. And when early on as a trainer, I used to go like by the book, like you need X amount per pound of body weight and all this stuff. And then it just, again, are we speaking to these people and are we actually helping them, or are we trying to be the smartest or sound the coolest or know the most? You know what I'm saying? So there's some things that you can do. Water is very important. People should be drinking more. But B, like, can we not just generalize it a little bit? So generally what I tell people is more than you are currently drinking. And for most people, that's the answer. And that's as far as it needs to go. Because like I said, when I was telling people, I was like, you need X amount per pound of body weight or whatever, like this many milliliters per pound of body weight. Like, again, it's just you're taking something and you're making it too complex and you're not actually helping people versus, if I tell you you need to be drinking more water than you currently are, that's what you're going to do.
Right, because if you give me, you should be drinking this much water and you could give me the 10th decimal point of exactly how much water is recommended from this specific book, I'm not going to make a connection with that. But if you
Yeah.
can integrate and say, well, yeah, how much are you drinking right now? Because you probably should be drinking more. That's very personal. I can make that tangible in my
Yeah.
mind, but some abstract number that doesn't really matter to me won't really be sustainable for me.
Exactly. And I think it's important that you brought that up because yeah, I could tell you, like, again, you need to be drinking this many milliliters or whatever, but again, is that going to help you as a person develop that relationship with drinking water, or are you just feeling like I need to drink water because I need to get X amount of milliliters of water per day versus being like, oh, I need to drink more. And then you dive into the strategies of like, okay, how can I get more water in, those sorts of things, and the things that are actually going to help you versus just being like, this is what it is.
That integration, it's huge.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's go to another one. I really like this one. Weighing yourself daily isn't unhealthy or toxic. And if someone had talked to me about this before I read your tweet, I probably would have sided on, you don't necessarily want to do that every day, blah, blah, blah. But what you say, weighing yourself daily isn't unhealthy or toxic. What's unhealthy and toxic is thinking your weight from a scale defines you. Your weight is literally just data. Weigh in daily to collect data, not to judge yourself.
Yeah.
I think that is beautiful. I've never looked at my weight as data. I've all just kind of the norm was to let it define you. If you weigh this much, either you're too much or you're too little.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's super important because a lot of people do relate their weight on a scale to their self-worth as a human, and again, that's just not teaching the behaviors and habits and just overall line of thinking that you need to be having with these sorts of things. If you're constantly collecting data about yourself, then you're going to be better served because of it, because you know where you need to adjust. Something that's really cool, and I don't know if you've seen this, but I'm doing a little mini cut right now on my Instagram. So I'm weighing myself every single day. I'm filming it. I'm showing my charts and stuff like that. I'm showing like spikes, drops, all this sort of thing, and I'm showing my trend line, just showing people, how slow of a process it is. Because again, we don't want to try to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. We want to try to lose weight, lose fat in a sustainable way that is gradual over time, that we're going to be able to do forever. Okay. So I'm showing them the bounces, the trend going down super, super slow. But I'm showing them like I said, those spikes, and how that spike doesn't necessarily mean I am fatter.
Yeah, you're fat now.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So something I did the other day is, it was a little later in the day and I weighed in, I filmed it. I had a glass of water. So let me backtrack. I step on the scale, film it. I think I was like 184. Got off the scale, drank the glass of water, like just chugged it, stepped back on the scale. Within that like 10 seconds, I gained 2 pounds. And
Wow.
just trying to show people that, okay, like this weight that you see right here doesn't, again, have anything to do with my self-worth. In that 10 seconds, the reason that I weigh more is because I have more in me because I drank the water. Same as if I would have got on the scale holding the cup of water. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like just trying to show you that the bigger picture is it's just data, and what is this data telling us? Because like I said, people they view these numbers as metrics that define us, and it's, if you start to look at it as a data, body weight, body fat, muscle mass, these sorts of things as data. Okay, how can I adjust and how can I change that data?
That would be like an NFL player throwing so many interceptions in a season, and you have a choice of either saying, well, it looks like I'm a terrible quarterback, or you can say, well, now I have some data collected that I can now integrate into the next season and try to maybe bring that down a little bit.
Exactly.
Over the period of the entire season,
Yeah, exactly. So, using that analogy, okay, I say you have a quarterback, he threw 20 interceptions, then you break down that data, okay, how many interceptions were against this coverage,
Right,
or
right.
how many was like they're a blitz put on or whatever the case may be. Yeah, it's data. So, you know, you look at fat loss, muscle gain, your body weight as data, and the more you can collect, the better you can respond, and the less like of that relationship you place on that number as it pertains to your self-worth. You view it more just as data, something that can be manipulated, something that can be changed, and you realize that it has nothing to do with you as a person. It's just something that is there.
Right, right. If I can't do this for the rest of my life, it's not the best strategy for me. Next time someone tries to convince you of a diet or exercise style, ask yourself this question. If the answer is no, then it's not the best strategy for you. Your health is a forever thing. This is that sustainability, that integration, the you finding and placing meaning on the things that will benefit you rather than just remaining in ignorance because you don't want to do it or anything
Yeah,
like that.
and it's kind of just those, you know, those big picture things like, can I do this forever? And that's why these like extreme diets, like, they work. They are restricting your calories in some way. So yeah, you're gonna see change initially, but you're not likely going to be able to do that for the rest of your life. And that's why you should tend to learn a way that is going to better serve you. Again, I like to use the analogy of, I don't really care about helping you initially right now. I care about helping you in 5 years when you're not working with me anymore, or when you're not in front of me talking to me anymore. It's like, do you have the tools? Do you have the habits? Do you have the behaviors that you need in order to do this forever? Because if you don't, then it's not going to be a good thing. You're not going to do it forever. Your health is going to, you know, take a back seat because of it. And that's just a road of different problems.
And so we got kind of a list of things. We talked about the macro guide. This is just on your link tree.
Okay.
5 foods that make dieting suck way less.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
Let's talk about it. Yeah. So, I just want to start creating more long form content. So articles, stuff like that, that people can reference, because it helps people find me, and it's, you know, free content. It's long form content. It's out there forever. You know, you see a title like that, it's catchy, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, people are inclined to read it. It's not that something. So let's break it down. These 5 foods, there's nothing special about them. There's nothing that are, you know, inherently magic about them when it comes to fat loss or anything like that. What they are 5 foods that A, are low in calorie, and B, they fill you up, so they're satiating. When the word satiating means it makes you feel full. So these 5 foods essentially do that. So you feel full, you haven't eaten very many calories, and it helps you just maintain the calorie deficit needed to lose fat. And that's basically all it really was. I mean, I could have added a lot more foods. I could have taken away some of the foods. There's just like 5 foods that I really like. Greek yogurt, berries, kimchi, oatmeal, and is it cottage cheese? I don't know. Cottage cheese maybe. So those 5 foods, again, they're low calorie per volume. So like, I think like a pound of blueberries is like 180 calories. If anyone can eat a pound of blueberries, it's pretty impressive. But it's not a lot of calories, so it's going to fill you up. There's a lot of like health benefits, and I didn't even go into the health benefits of the food. It's just, you know, low calorie, very filling.
You're working on a cookbook.
Yeah. So that's the one that people always ask me about. So if you follow like my fitness page, you might not know too much about this, but if you followed my personal page for like a long time, you would know that like I throw it down when it comes to cooking. Like, people want me to be a chef, I think, more than they want me to be a trainer. I don't really know. I've always really enjoyed cooking, and then obviously because like fitness is important to me, I, you know, still wanted to learn how to eat good food while still maintaining my fitness goals. So just like, again, just macro friendly recipes, stuff like that I'm gonna have. Hopefully have that in like August or September.
Okay.
One thing, I'm like good at cooking, but I'm not a recipe follower, so like having to write the shit down and like actually do that is like something I've never done, because I just kind of like little of this, little of that kind of thing, but just trying to dial those things in. I But again, I think that again speaks to my macro guide, why it's important to kind of understand those fundamentals, and then just realizing you don't have to eat plain rice and plain chicken in order to look better. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can still eat burgers, you can still eat whatever you want. You know, you just got to figure out how to make it work for you. There's ways to make those things healthier that taste just as good, and that's kind of the goal with the cookbook.
What's a couple of your favorite dishes that are going to be included in this?
Yeah, barbecue chicken pizza is probably the one I get asked about the
Oh,
most. Um, I did like a Cajun chicken Alfredo one time that was really popular. Um, I have like a lot of protein pancake recipes that, because I have so many, that's kind of a struggle to figure out like which to use and which is going to be the best.
right.
But yeah, a lot of those things that I think people ask me about. There's a lot that people ask me about, and um, again, I eat these certain foods just because I have that like understanding of
Right.
macronutrients and stuff like that, and I know how to make these foods like fit into my diet, and I don't really have to think about it at this point because I have understood macronutrients for a while now, that it's just kind of like a little more intuitive at this point. But it took like a while of, you know, doing the things that I teach in my macro guide.
And so, what is the ultimate goal with your business, and what do you want to grow it into? What do you want it to look like here in the next few years?
Man, I could go a lot of ways with this questions. I think I answered this a little differently off the air,
Mm,
like when you first got here. I think more than anything is just like, how can I help the most amount of people, and what does that look like? So, again, that's getting out more long form content. That's probably ultimately doing my own health and fitness related podcast where I talk about all these sorts of things, like more in depth with other professionals, those sorts of things. Um, Training people both in person and online, coming out with more guides as it pertains to different aspects of health and fitness. But it just really looks like, you know, when I ask myself the question, what's my goal in this? It's to help the most amount of people, and that could change. But I think it's just a matter of doing it, every single day in different ways. Content, training people, creating guides, creating articles, creating podcasts, just um, you know, putting my information out there so
mhm.
that it, like I said, it can be communicated in a way that someone can actually understand a little bit better than I think is out there.
And so, I have this one. This is more of a personal one because I've looked into it, and you hear one story, and then you hear someone who completely says, "Oh, well, the science contradicts," and then people say the science contradicts that. What is your opinion on fasting?
Yeah, I think it's can be a great strategy for one person, and it can be a really bad strategy for another person. So a lot of the times when people ask questions regarding like health and fitness, if someone doesn't answer with "it depends," you should just run away. That's just like a blanket statement that
Hmm.
for a lot of the times is like the truth, because it is so individualized when it comes to the person. Like, there might be a person who like fasting. So let's just define what we're talking about, like intermittent fasting,
Mm,
right?
right,
So
right.
a 16/8 intermittent fast where essentially you're just like skipping breakfast. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So are there some people who do better with that, skipping breakfast? Yeah. And then that's probably like a really good strategy for you. Are there others who, like, because of that, tend to restrict binge as a result of, oh, I can't eat breakfast, so therefore breakfast is associated as bad, and now I'm restricting myself later and later and later,
Right.
and now I'm essentially binge eating. Um, for for that person, fasting is a terrible strategy because again, it doesn't teach those relationships that you're needed. The thing about fasting is, what it does is it creates a calorie deficit because it's essentially taking away breakfast. Does that make sense? So because of that, you're now eating less calories than you would have otherwise.
Right.
and you're able to lose weight and maintain that weight if you're able to stick to it forever. But yeah, for some people that's, a terrible strategy. For some it's a great strategy, and it's something that, I know a lot of people who use it. I've used it personally before. Again, for me, it was I thought it was a really good strategy for me. Like, I started just skipping breakfast, and I would eat my first meal at noon. And then over time, so I essentially did it for like 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
And over time, I was like pushing the envelope of like not eating till like 6 p.m. and just so scared of like eating breakfast. And I was like, I've got to like really take a step back and like look at like, okay, this is not a good thing for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I essentially would gorge myself at night, and I looked really good. I was shredded, ab veins, stuff like that, like things that I thought mattered. But I was like, my relationship with like food right now is not good.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of like taking those past experiences has kind of been important for me to kind of then go and like teach other people, because I've had these experiences where I've learned a lot. I've done all the wrong things and stuff like that. But again, I'm not going to completely dismiss it, because just because it didn't work for me doesn't mean it might not work for you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, for
Right.
you might just be like, oh, skipping breakfast. For me, it was like terrified of breakfast. And I was
Right.
like, this is bullshit. Like, I love breakfast food. Eating breakfast is not bad. I'm going to make myself eat breakfast. You know what I'm saying? Man, I could do this all day. I just really love talking about all of these things. It's like really cool to just sit down and have someone else kind of ask me questions that they have, and I get people, DMing me questions, and that's just, really, I look forward to it, because it really makes me a better communicator. It really helps me like understand again how to speak to the majority of people when, let's say, I explained something here today that didn't come across really good. Like, that's going to then help me understand why it didn't come across the way I wanted to, and then go and fix it, and then be able to communicate it in a way that, just like I said, actually helps people. Because I think that that's more important than being the most right or being the most scientifically accurate. It's like, can you actually take a complex thing, explain it in a way that helps someone who doesn't understand, doesn't have the formal background, but also doesn't really care. And yeah, I don't know, man. I could talk about anything.
What are three most common questions that you get? Because that's kind of what this is all about, is trying to represent just your average. If you just grab someone off the street and sat them in here and told them to ask questions to you, that's what I'm trying to get. What are three common questions that you're asked?
There's a lot of common questions. There's one that just kind of stands out, is that, should I lift weights? Like, that's just kind of like one that people throw out there, and it's just, yeah, unless you have something like really, really wrong, resistance training or lifting weights is essentially just getting stronger at basic movement patterns. So like, we have these basic movement patterns, like squatting, right? Like, my nephew, who can barely walk, can squat down, and my grandma can sit down into a chair, so that's a squat.
Right.
And so everyone in between should always have that movement pattern of the squat. And so we're just strengthening that, so that when we're 25 years old, we're strong enough that when we're 80 years old, we can still do that, and live long, healthy, pain-free lives and those sorts of things. So yeah, people ask all the time, like, well, is weightlifting appropriate for me? Like, most of the time, yes. There are cases that, it might not be a good idea for you, but there are very few cases, because again, we're just strengthening basic movement patterns.
And so is that like the big five? Are
Yeah.
those all giving you just basic movement patterns that you are building strength upon?
Yeah, squatting, deadlifting, pressing, rowing or pulling. Like, we're always doing those things. Like, think about the last time you bent up off the ground and picked something up off the ground. You know what I'm saying? Like, you guys have to do that right here with this stuff. That's a deadlift. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a basic movement pattern. Or lifting something and putting it away in your cupboard, like, that's an overhead press. You know what I'm saying? Like, these things are, they translate to everything else. And so strengthening them for the rest of your life, like you're always going to be doing them until the day that you die. So get strong at them and you're going to be better served because of it. And that's why it's the big five. They translate, it's not just, I want to get a crazy PR on my squat. It's, again, the 90-year-old who needs to be able to sit down and stand up in their chair without assistance. Like, that's the goal.
Do you have any more questions that, because those common questions you want to answer, you want to try to answer as many as possible to get it kind of out of the way. So if you have any others that you think need to be answered, this is your opportunity.
Yeah. People ask a lot about, just because I have the macro guide out there, people ask about it a lot. Essentially what it is. So if I didn't explain it well before, it is foundational nutrition knowledge. So explaining what macronutrients are, why they are important, and how to apply them and where to start. So that's basically what it is, and why it's important to understand that as it pertains to not just your aesthetics, like the way you look, but the way you feel, the way you perform, the way to be healthy for the rest of your life. So people ask about the macro guide and like, should they do it or should they look into it? And I wouldn't have made it if I didn't think that, because again, I don't know that you necessarily need to track your macros for the rest of your life. And I don't think that is my message. Because like I said, I kind of try to eat a little more intuitively, but it's because I have that foundational knowledge and I just applied it for a long time that now it's just like kind of second nature. Like I know how many carbs are in, 100 grams of a banana. And I know like why that's important to me, because if I want to perform well on something, then maybe I need the sugars from the banana and I need to know how many sugars I want to fuel that performance, those sorts of things.
Right.
And it just comes with doing it over time. You don't need to obsessively like carry around your food scale all the time. It's like, if your goal is to get 4 ounces of protein at every meal or whatever the case may be, like you should know what 4 ounces looks like. So that comes from tracking for 30 days or 60 days or whatever that, you know what I'm saying?
And that will leave you with habits that you don't need to pack all that stuff around, but just how you maneuver in the world, you'll be able to identify, oh, that's how much this is, that's how much this is, that's what that means to me, and that's what that means to me.
Yeah, exactly. And like what it inherently does for you. So like if you're tracking macros and you realize that this amount of fat per day like causes me digestive issues, like you start to pay attention to stuff like that because you're looking at it and you're collecting that data. It's just another way of data collection. And so that like, hey, maybe I do a little bit better with a little bit lower fat and a little more carbs in my diet and those sorts of things. And you learn that from tracking for a certain amount of time, and that's dependent upon the person. I don't know, man. I get a lot of questions, so it's kind of hard to dial them in. But like, strength training, people always ask about strength training. People always ask about tracking macros. They get scared about tracking macros, and
it's that kind of overwhelming feeling where it's like, oh, there's just going to be too much going on. Exactly. I kind of want to shut down.
And like I said, I tried to just like simplify it. I tried to explain it to 17-year-old me who didn't know any better, didn't know anything, and that was my goal with that. And like I said, you don't have to do it forever, but it teaches you a lot that is going to benefit you, like I said, in 5 years versus just right now.
Totally. And for my final question, what is one thing that gives you hope in this world?
One thing that gives me hope in this world, just the fact that like something like this can now be put out into the world and people can actually benefit from it, man. I think it's awesome. I think you kind of mentioned your goal is like conversations with people, educating others and stuff like that. I think that's my goal, educating others. It's obviously in a specific field, you know what I'm saying? But like just educating, teaching people, helping people. I think that like if you're not helping someone in some way, then you're wasting your time. And that's what gives me hope, is that I can use a platform to help people.